What's up, everybody? Nick Powell's publisher of 1851franchise.com here with another episode of Meet the Zor. Today we are talking to Pete Baldine from Moran Family of Brands. Coming up next. All right, Pete, everybody giggles at this, so you're going to giggle too. But question one is only scripted. Then we go into our conversation. But I love question one because it gets a tremendous story. And I know yours is going to be tremendous. So how did you accidentally fall into franchising? What's your franchise story?
Oh, wow. That goes way back, Nick. Okay. That's quite some time ago.
1980 with Jiffy Lube, huh?
Yes. 1980 with Jiffy Lube. And the story kind of goes like this. I was playing football in college, and all I wanted to do was coach college football. And I stayed on and coached at the college that I played at, Cortland State University, which by the way, last year was the Division III national champions. Okay.
Great.
And then I had gotten hired after that to coach at Western Maryland College, which is now McDaniel College. And the reason I got hired there was because I played in junior college for another guy who was now the head coach at Western Maryland. So I went down there and I was coaching. I coached a year at Cortland and I coached a year at Western Maryland. And then the head coach at Western Maryland came to me and said, "Hey, I'm starting a new business and I need somebody I can trust to go out to Utah for a couple of months. Would you go during the off season?" And I was like, "Yeah, I hadn't been out west before. Sure, I'll go out to Utah and check it out, Well, little did I know that the business that he was starting, he was the founder of Jiffy Lube. And the business that he was starting was Jiffy Lube. And he sent me out there to run the first company store in the country in Salt Lake City. And then after about a month, he started calling me and trying to get me to stay with the company. And I said, "Jim, that wasn't our deal. I'm a football coach, And he's a better salesman than me. And he won the debate. And that was the end of my coaching career and the beginning of my franchising career."
What a great start to the story.
We went from that one store in 1980 to 1,100 stores 10 years later. And it was like drinking from a fire hose. It was an unbelievable experience with, everything that we went through and all the rapid growth. And, it was learned everything about everything. I still try to, Jim is now 87 years old. And I still try to talk to him once a week.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So a bunch of things that I want to unpack from the start of that story. So you take this corporate job. I assume franchising isn't in the cards on corporate unit one. It's more like I have this business concept that I think can work. And at that point, is it a disruptor brand? Are there brands that are similar, or is it like, how is he even jumping into the category?
It was totally a disruptor brand, okay, because you had a gap of a few years just before that to where you did this transition from, the two-bay gas stations that had a mechanic there and did your maintenance work in the neighborhood. And then all those went away with the high volume pumpers. And there was a period of time there in the mid to late 70s where it was hard to get an oil change, because all those places were closing down and they were becoming high volume gas stations with convenience stores. See? And so it totally disrupted because there was nothing there, Now, our founder had the foresight to say, "Hey, we got to get there first with the most because other people are going to copy this." And he did that. And we got to, before we had any, really significant competitors in the quick lube industry, we were probably at 400 units. It was probably 1984, probably. And we were at about 400 units. And that's when we started seeing, the copycat models come.
Are you feeling entrepreneurial along this ride at all to say, how do I get in as a franchisee?
Oh yeah. I had those, I had those opportunities many times. But my boss continued to kind of block them and keep me on the corporate side. I was kind of, I was the guy who learned the business from the ground up, and so I was the operational guy that they relied on the most, and he and other guys in the system had done that. They started out on the corporate side and then ended up as franchisees. There were a number of times when I had that opportunity and he talked me out of it. So
he knew your value. I mean, like, if you're, I'm sure you've reflected back on this, but to have a football coach mentality, I mean, ultimately you got to figure out a way to have empathy and no empathy at the same time to coach players into getting the most out of them and building a team. And I would imagine that skill set is what translated nicely over to the role you were in, because you're doing the same with franchisees and giving them the confidence that they can do this, being hard but fair.
Nick, in all honesty, if I didn't have that coaching background and that sports background, from my whole life, I don't know that I could have survived in the business world, because the first couple of years, that's all I knew. I had no business experience, right? That's what I knew. And every time a problem came up, every time a situation came up, it was the transfer of that skill set. What would I do if this was my football team? How would I solve this personnel problem? And so the first 2 years until I got more experience, everything went back to that coaching mentality, and that helped me succeed. All those skills were really transferable and applicable to what I was doing.
I'd imagine most brands that struggle actually miss that quality, because if you think about the whole the life cycle of a sports coach, you have your cuts, like you're selecting your players, you cut them, and that happens with candidates too. You're like they're not gonna make it. They don't have the financial means or the cultural means, so cut them. Now you've developed your team, which ends up being your franchisees, and now you have a multitude of different personalities that you got to get to blend together and be focused on a singular goal. And so, like, what you were doing, whether conscious or not, you're accessing the competitive nature of being a coach and the structure of it, which if I think about brands today, when I hear my franchisees suck, well, they suck because you don't know how to coach them and you're not willing to get down to their level to make them better. And I imagine that was probably early on and all the way through your career has been a huge asset for you.
That brings up an interesting point, because where the first couple of years I was in the company store side as we were growing company stores, and then as we started bringing on a lot of franchisees, they brought me over to the franchise side, and then we had this evolution of going from single unit franchisees to big multi-unit franchisees, right? And the level of support that was required for those multi-unit franchisees was very different than what it was for the single unit franchisees. And I was the guy that they pulled in and said, look, you got to help all these multi-unit guys figure it out.
That's a huge task in itself.
Yeah.
Okay. So one more question on the Jiffy Lube side. I mean, obviously franchising was a different time in the 80s and 90s. This is before the internet makes it possible that you and I could post right now. We could have this online and people are watching it. So exposure had to be word of mouth, expositions, which was the gathering spot, newspaper, traditional advertising. Like, it had to be in bootstrap, but to go on that rocket ship of a growth means obviously franchisees are making money, and you're continuing to disrupt, and the brand's being protected. So, like, when you think about the culture and the rush of that, is that gone from today's franchise world? Like, can that ever be replicated in that sort of culture way?
Yeah, I don't think it's gone. Our the first couple of years that we were growing with franchisees, it was really the friends and family model, right? People who believed in our founder was somebody who was a self-made millionaire by the time he was 38 years old, and he got back into the game with Jiffy Lube, and so the network that he had built was where we found our first group of franchisees, right? And then their networks. And so it just kept, building on everybody's network, but the initial push was friends and family, and I think you still see that today with a lot of the emerging brands, it's you see an emerging brand and their first franchisees are people who get excited about the model, or believe in the believe in the founder, and want to ride those coattails, because there's been success there before. I think it's easier today because of the internet. We have so much more in the way of communication than we had back then. So I think that actually makes it a bit easier.
Yeah, and probably, but also more competitive. I mean, take the friends and family route. Like, and this is the sadder part of franchising is sometimes a brand that hasn't proven out the structure, the coaching, and the unit level economics can still award franchises to people based on the passion. And then if the business viability is not there, those people lose their life savings, and that's part of the exposure because. Nobody knows what franchising is until you get into it. Like, there's a lot to be educated on the topic. So I think about your career. I mean, if you would have been a professional athlete, you would have been a single team guy. Like, you would have just lived out your whole career with a single team. Like, you're obviously a loyalist, and you've stayed committed to now this side of business. So you had to fall in love with automotive the same way that you fell in love with football. What has kept you so dialed in for so long and not feeling like you have to jump around and make the grass is greener?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that the answer to that is, I've basically worked for 3 companies my whole career, Jiffy Lube, Safelite Auto Glass. That came, it became Safelite after a couple of different acquisitions that I went through, but Safelite, and then Moran Family of Brands. And automotive's great. Okay. But that's not the driving force for me. The driving force for me is what we're able to do with franchisees and helping people who want to be entrepreneurs, want to start their own business, and being able to provide them with a successful platform that allows them to do that, and then being able to support them through that life cycle. And then also, you talk about the longevity, also being able to help them exit with all the equity when it's time for them to exit. I just had what was a highlight for me. 23 years ago, I sold a franchise to a guy down in San Antonio, and he did really well. He made a lot of money over the years. Probably 20 years ago, he called me and he was mad that his landlord was going to raise the rent, and I talked him into buying the property, and he bought the real estate. And 6 months ago, I sold the business for him to a new franchisee. So it's a 23-year, relationship, and that's what turns me on, that kind of thing, And now, by the way, he decided that he really didn't want to be retired, so he's doing some operational work for us and opening up new stores.
That's awesome. But, I mean, well, that's the story of franchising, right? Like that.
Yeah.
I mean, just you sharing that story makes me think of all of the wasted opportunity that franchisors don't celebrate the resale. Like, the resale and the exit of a franchisee means proof the story worked. And here you have a guy that grew his family's wealth through the tools that your business created for him. And then at the end of it, he got to walk away with a retirement amount that made it so that he can do what he wants, which is like, let me just help more franchisees.
Exactly. And to me, there's just nothing better than that, you know? So it's not automotive per se. It's being able to help franchisees, get in and have that success and do what they want. And yeah, there's pains through the process a lot of times, but you're there to help them through those pains and help them get past them, and move on to bigger and better things, and the resale thing is not a bad thing. I mean, most of the time, like in our system, I think we have a very unique situation in that I've got 33% of our franchisees have been in the system for 20 years or more.
That's crazy.
16% of them have been in for 30 years or more. Okay, that's off a 15-year agreement. That means all these guys that fall into that category have, are on either their second or even third franchise license agreement. So to me, that's a huge success that we have that kind of longevity, and it's also my responsibility to make sure that when they do want to retire, I'm able to help them do that, and I'm able to help them find a buyer, and help them negotiate the deal and help them get out when it's their time.
Okay,
that brings it, full circle. It's great that you get franchisees in your system and you grow your system, but they need to be successful while they're there, and they need to be able to get out when they want to get out.
So when you're speaking, and what I would encourage is play back what you just said, because there's a few things that I extract. And obviously I'm trying to, part of what I listen to in this is what's the standout from any business. And what I'm hearing, the widget ends up being automotive, but the widget's irrelevant.
Right.
You built your Pete's brand around coaching and getting the best out of people given the widget, whether it's a football or it's automotive, doesn't matter. So you could add a restaurant brand to the family of brands, and it would do the same thing because you've franchised your philosophical side. When I land on the site, though, it says success runs in the family. What I just heard, when you start off by 33% have been in the business for this long, and you go through this chart of people, Moran is family. And the word family is that's the key word. It's not that it runs in the family. You are family because
right.
The franchisees are staying in. I think that's important. But here's the other thing. And obviously I've been looking at your site for the last week or so. If I were you, not that you want to make this monumental change of your core values around drive, but I would change E from enthusiasm to E to exit. Because what you're doing is so big.
We you know what, Nick, we didn't update the website yet, but we recently just changed the E for enthusiasm to E for engagement.
Okay.
Yeah. Engagement with the franchisees, right?
I just feel like when brands use the word family loosely, and obviously it's a part of your DNA, but that number, that's the number. That's actually the number I would probably lead with. I don't care about the 120 plus franchise location. That doesn't matter. It's a 33. It was 33 and 18.
33 and 33% and 16%.
Okay, so almost 50% of our system has stuck it out with us this long and have gone through the renewal of a franchise agreement. I mean, that's
huge.
That's validation. Yeah, it's huge.
That's huge. Yeah,
I love it. So okay, so give me kind of the state of the business today, just in case someone's watching this. Why would I? Obviously, you're hearing your philosophy, but what's the state of the business?
Yeah, so the business financially, it is a great business to be in today. Okay, there's some key dynamics about our industry that are driving it. That are really significant. Okay. And number one would be the age of the cars on the road today is at 12.5 years old. Okay. That's continued to grow. Probably 15 years ago, it was 7 years old, and now it's 12 and a half years old. People are not buying new cars like they used to. Okay. They're fixing the ones they have. They don't like the fact that they have to have a 5-year, $800 a month car note. And those things are helping us. The technology in the cars today is another factor that really helps us. They're complex, and you have to be up to date from a technician standpoint and a computerization standpoint, and have the skill to be able to diagnose these cars today. 15 years ago, somebody came in and they said they had a transmission problem. You'd drive it around the block a few times and you'd say, yeah, it's not shifting between second and third. The transmission's got to come out. You can't do that today because there's several different things that might be completely unrelated to the transmission that might cause it to not shift between second and third, So you've got to stay on the cutting edge with technology in this business, and we do that. We have a tremendous tech department that provides technical support to the franchisees. We also years ago realized that we had an advantage that some of our competitors didn't have because of what I was just talking about with the technology and the diagnostics blending together so much. You really don't need to specialize. Like in the 80s, everything was specialized, transmission shops, brake shops, tune-up shops, quick lubes, you name it, right? What we did was we went to more of a one-stop shop, and we had Mr. Transmission and we had Milex Complete Auto Care that were both standalone acquisitions that we had, okay? We decided years ago that we could put the two of those together under the same roof, have both franchises in the same footprint, okay? Teach the franchisees how to handle the throughput and how to do both, okay? And what that does is it creates a one-stop shop where we can do everything to the customer's car. But even more importantly, what it does is it gives us the frequency of use where people are coming to us 3 to 5 times a year, which allows us to build that relationship and build a trust factor with our customers. Let's face it, people don't know these cars today. And so when they are told that they have this major repair that's a couple $1,000s, they're skeptical. Okay? And it's a mystery to them. Okay. And if we've done our job in building those relationships with that frequency of use and building that trust factor, we can eliminate that skepticism, right? And we can build a loyalty between ourselves and our customers. And that's our game plan. That's what we do.
Follow-up question, but first 2 statements. One, that's why owner-operator, in my opinion, is the secret to this industry, because you have people who live in your community who are the honest. They want to be as honest as obviously they humanly can. And the second thing that I'm hearing here is probably often dismissed as a lower level type employee, but the tradesman has to be much more sophisticated today because of the depth of what's going on in the automobile. So the tradesman is probably also contributing to getting that car over 12 years on the road because their level of sophistication has gone to a whole new level.
Oh, it really has. And that shows in the, we're starting to see, for a long time, you didn't see that many people, young people going into the trades. Okay. But we're starting to see that change because of the changes in the industry. And they're starting to see that as a tradesperson, they can make a really good income, without the debt associated with college.
Yeah, right? And you clearly have to know what you're doing in order to maintain the trust and in order to get someone's car back on the road as fast as possible.
That's right.
Do you want the operator to be? Do you want the owner to be an operator in these scenarios? So that do you want the owner to build these skill sets too, or are they the salesperson for the organization?
We want the owner to be an operator as the owner, not working on cars.
Yeah, got it.
You know, we have a few that actually work on cars, but you know, we help them, you know, recruit, okay, and we help them train. But you really want the right technicians on your team. The owners do not need to be technicians or mechanics.
Love it. Okay, so I mean, if I'm watching this, and my broken record statement is I always bet on the jockey, not on the horse, and so I'm betting on you. And obviously, you've been there for a long time, and you've built infrastructure, and I'm sure you lead through those same philosophies, so that there's a consistency throughout the organization. So you could tell me that you're running an ice cream shop. I'm bought in on the coaching side because you can give me the pathway to be successful as long as I listen to what the blueprint is. If there's anybody that's watched this up to this point, I mean, I'm hearing not just loyalty from you, but loyalty from franchisees and longevity. And the only way you stay loyal is if you get something out of it as much as you put into it. Like of course you would quit it if it wasn't working for you. And so like, there's a beautiful story beyond this. But if there's someone that's watched this up to this point, is there anything else you want them to know about you that would obviously drive them to get into your website and reach out?
You know, first of all, I'd say, Nick, that it's a very good business to be in. It's a good business model that has very good margins, right? And can really deliver strong profitability. Much better than a lot of other models in franchising, quite frankly. Okay. But I think that the culture issue is a big one. Okay. We are awarding franchises to people that are a good fit with our culture. We're not trying to be the biggest automotive franchisor out there. We want to be the franchisor that knows our franchisees well, that knows their husbands and wives, that knows their kids. You know, and it really is a family-oriented culture. And we're growing, and we want to continue to grow, but we grow at our pace, okay, to where our infrastructure and our team can maintain that culture very well. And that's what's most important to us, I think, is that we do it right.
What I love about our conversation, like if I think my own life, I wanted to be a baseball player that rode a motorcycle, but you got to be good at baseball and you got to be able to ride a motorcycle to be able to have that life. And here and you want to be a professional football player and you then a professional coach. And both of us end up in franchising, which would probably have not been anywhere near the top 100 things on our list of things that we dreamt about as right. children. But it's allowed us to cross-apply what we were passionate about into impacting other people's lives. And that's culture. And I think at the end of the day, if you can build a culture that keeps people happy as much as they can, this is still work. Even if you own your own business, it's still work. But when you feel like you're part of something special, then it gives you purpose. And when you have purpose, you enjoy what you do and you're going to put the time into it. And I think that's obvious. Clearly, that's what you've built at this company. And it's super impressive. So,
well, I didn't build it alone either. You know, Barb Moran is the owner of Moran Family of Brands, and we've worked together for 24 years. And she, you know, lives, you know, everything we've talked about as I do, you know. And we've got a great team here that, you know, that believes in everything that we're doing and really cares about our franchisees. So it all comes together, you know, because of that team effort and that family orientation.
Well, that's a football team, a baseball team. If you would have said I wanted to be a professional golfer, then it probably wouldn't have worked out. Like this would not have worked out.
That's right.
Well, awesome story, Pete. Thanks for sharing it with us. I love it. For Pete, I'm Nick. This is another episode of Meet the Zor. Take care.